Hello, welcome to our final Sports World Have Your Say of 2011 with me, Amanda Davis. It's going to be a cracker coming up this week. It's City sitting pretty at the top of the Christmas tree. We've got a seasonal half-time report.
We know that it was difficult to beat Arsenal because Arsenal are playing very well in this moment.
The festive cheer is in short supply at the other end of the table, though it's getting frosty for some of the managers.
Competitive, saying the same things, and I've said that to the players. There must be a point, you know, when they stand up and be counted and show not only their ability but their character.
Also, what do you make of the changing world order in football, in the Champions League and beyond? And why Christmas parties and players don't always mix. Yeah, there's lots of you talking already on Facebook and using the Twitter hashtag SWHYS this week. Keep those comments coming into all the usual places. Why not pick up the phone? Give us a call on the usual number, +44 20 70 83 73 33. This week, I'm joined by a player famously injured and out for a month after pulling a muscle getting out of bed. It is Swansea's Congolese-born striker Leroy Lita. He's waiting to talk to you, scorer of 83 goals for clubs like Middlesbrough, Reading and Norwich. We're looking forward to getting the conversation going, but before we go any further, let's get a summary of all the latest news with Sean. You're watching Sports World Have Your Say on what's been a Christmas cracker of a day's football. 5 of the top 6 in action. And despite Manchester United leading the way for a couple of hours after beating QPR, it's Manchester City back at the top of the tree heading into the festive period. They beat Arsenal 1-0. I've got Swansea's Leroy Lita with me this week waiting to talk to you. We're also joined by Jonathan Wilson, editor of The Blizzard, the Football Quarterly. And we're also joined by Martin, who's a Manchester City fan based in Sweden. He joins us on Skype. Leroy, let's start with you. What did you make of what you saw this afternoon?
Yeah, I see 2 of the games, and they're both good games, and both teams got their wins, so it's all good.
What do you think? Some people saying there's 3 teams in the title race, some saying 5. What's your view?
I would say 2, but you can put Tottenham in there as well because they've been fantastic this year and they've really been pushing the top 2. But to be honest, it's going to be out of the 2 Manchester teams.
Jonathan, top 2, top 3, or top 5?
I think realistically a top 2. I mean, Tottenham have done brilliantly to still be in touch. I mean, they do have a game in hand against Everton. If they win that, then I think they're only 4 points behind City. So you can't write them off. But I think realistically, the size of their squad means that eventually they will lag behind. I think then the interesting thing is the battle for the top 4 for the Champions League. And I think there's probably, if we say City and United are pretty much guaranteed to be 2 of those 4 teams, there's then 4 other sides competing for 2 slots. And I think that's going to be fascinating come the end of the season.
Martin, who do you think are your team's competitors for the title race?
Oh, I'm more of the worrying kind, so I see it as a top 5, top 4 battle still. I mean, it's still too early to say anything. As usual, it will all be determined and become more clearer in January, February. But I'd say still, I mean, a couple of months ago, Arsenal people were talking about relegation or mid-table mediocrity, but I mean, they're right up there again. So things change fast in football, and it's still too early. So I say top 5 battle, still.
Leroy, how worried would you be as Manchester City that United are actually still only a couple of points behind and have still not really played that well?
I don't think they'll be worried. They're just looking forward to the challenge. It's a new challenge for Manchester City. Man United are challenging for the title every year, so there's nothing new to them. The pressure is going to be on, obviously, Man United because everyone expects them to win every year. But Man City have been doing really well, and they're going to give them a run for their money.
Well, let's have a listen to what Sir Alex Ferguson said after his side's 1-0 victory over QPR.
Surely we put that game to bed after about 30 minutes. And the goalkeepers had 2 fantastic saves, obviously, that kept them in the game, but we were very wasteful with our chances. But the important thing is, as you said, it was a good team performance. We played some very good football, and we should have scored a lot of goals there. But 2-0 away from home, I think that's we accept we take that.
Let's say hello to Abdullah, a Manchester United fan who joins us from Kuwait, along with Ibrahim, an Arsenal fan. You can see them there in the middle box. Sir Alex Ferguson said United missed too many chances. What do you think?
Yes, indeed. But however, regarding to the circumstances which happens among the season and the poor budget that they pay in the last mercato, I think it harms the team. However, Manchester United have the experience and they have the ability in the Christmas time and the tiny schedule for the games. And I think after the knockout of the Champions League took place, I think Man City will suffer a lot as well, and the EuroLeague as well, because they don't have the full experience that they can play in three destinations. So they might slip with some point, and just Manchester United, they can hit them because they are just in 2 points deficit from Man City, and they have the experience with Sir Alex Ferguson for more than 25 years.
Martin, do you want to respond to that?
Pardon?
Do you want to respond to that, that Manchester City are going to suffer because of a lack of experience from the team and the manager competing at such a high level?
Well, no, I disagree. I mean, Manchester United, they have Ferguson, still needs experience, but there's a lot of inexperience amongst the players, and I'd say the veterans are letting them down. I mean, Ebra, today he was mediocre at best. I'd say there's a lack of experience in United as well, if we're going to count experience as a valid factor.
Well, Atif Nazim from Kuwait has actually said on Facebook, Manchester City have a tough road ahead. They'll find it hard to keep the winning momentum going. Leroy, is it really that tough, leading from the front?
Well, I've never been in a position in the Premier League, so I wouldn't know, but I can imagine it will be. The pressure's on you every week to win. But it's a challenge that you will look forward to, and I'm sure the Manchester City players and Manchester United players are just looking forward to every game and challenging themselves.
Is going to be the key going forward into the second half of the season for the two sides?
Yeah, definitely. You know, it's early days yet. I can remember years ago when Newcastle were miles ahead of Manchester United, and Manchester still came back and won the title. So anything's possible.
Ibrahim, what do you think about that as an Arsenal fan looking in? What do you think about the race for the title?
Actually, today we lose against Manchester City. I think we are out of the race. We should focus on the 4th place to be in the Champions League next year. Poor quality from the players today, and there's a poor quality with the referee. There's a poor decision, so I think we are out of the race today.
Well, it was Manchester City 1, Arsenal 0, a fantastic game. Some calling it the best game of the season so far. This was the reaction afterwards to the Manchester City manager, Roberto Mancini.
I think that we did a good performance after Chelsea, because we had 2 strong games in the last week. Very difficult game, but we know that it was difficult to beat Arsenal because Arsenal playing very well in this moment.
Jonathan, it's frightening, isn't it, when you look at Manchester City and who they had on the bench, and what more could come from them?
That's right. I mean, they have options all over the place. If Balotelli isn't performing, you bring in Dzeko. If Aguero isn't playing particularly well, Silva will do it. And I think that's actually the problem United have, that they don't have the depth or the depth of experience in their squad. And I think the injuries that they've had this season, they have had a terrible run of injuries, which I think you can probably say 9 regular first teamers out. That they don't really have players who can step up and replace them. And I mean, they seem very reliant on Tom Cleverley early in the season for creativity through midfield, and his injury has clearly hit them from a creative point of view. But I think something that's possibly slightly overlooked is the significance of Nemanja Vidic to them. That this season, when he's played, they've conceded a goal every 149 minutes. When he hasn't played, and this is excluding today, so before today's game, they conceded a goal every 69 minutes. So they're almost twice as good with him as without. So if he's out for the rest of the season, then suddenly there's a big problem at the back. Rio Ferdinand, who could give him that experience at centre-back, he's had ongoing injury problems for the last couple of seasons. You can't rely on him to be there every week. And then you're looking to very inexperienced players. And I think that is a big problem for them that possibly they haven't faced for maybe 12, 13, 14 years. The squad is that thin now.
So Abdullah, on that front, who would you want to see Manchester United bringing in January?
Well, I think Daniele De Rossi from Roma. I think he will be a great player to fill the place in the midfield. And I think they have some availability for Mario Götze. I think he will be a big advantage as well for the team. In my point of view, Manchester United needs 4 players. One of them in the centre back, the player who's playing in Borussia Dortmund, and I think De Rossi as well will be a great player to play in Manchester United, and I think he will be the next Roy Keane for Man United. And I think they need a good striker as well in the squad, because you can't rely just on Ronny or Chicharito. And they will send Macheda, I think, in January for a loan. So I think they need to fill these places, and they need a replacement for Patrice Evra, because he can't play the whole games in the whole season.
Leroy, do you think Manchester United needs some help for Wayne Rooney?
I'm sure. I think they've got enough there. They got Berbatov to come back, and players like that. Owen, if he gets himself fit, is a top striker still. I don't think they need any more strikers, and they got enough there.
So you'd say no if they came in for you?
I definitely wouldn't say no. So.
OK, let's just remind ourselves of how the Premier League table stands after a busy day of action. This is the bottom, Bolton and Blackburn propping up the rest. Wigan, the other team in the relegation zone. Only once in the history of the Premier League has the team going into Christmas bottom of the table survived the drop. Defeat for Sunderland and QPR today. They are 15th and 16th, as you can see there. And Leroy's Swansea in 12th. We'll come on to them in just a few moments. Let's have a look at the other end, and there we are. Manchester City leading the way on 41 points, a phenomenal goal difference of 35. They're 2 points clear of Manchester United. Spurs up to third, above Chelsea ahead of their big meeting on Thursday. They, of course, beat Sunderland 1-0 today. Arsenal stay fifth, and Liverpool leapfrog Newcastle into sixth, 12 points off the lead. So that is how things stand at the top of the table. We'll be talking about things at the bottom and how the teams are feeling the winter chill in just a couple of minutes here on Sports World. Have your say. Hi, you're watching Sports World. Have your say. Let's welcome Tarek, a Newcastle fan from Cairo, who joins the conversation. I've got Jonathan with us, the editor of The Blizzard Football Quarterly magazine, and Leroy Lita, Swansea striker, is also with us. Leroy, goalless draw against Swansea, but all in all, not a bad start to the season for Swansea. Nobody's even talking about you as relegation candidates now.
I think, we've set our targets and we take one game at a time, so we just got to maintain that, play our football. We've got a great manager who believes in us, so we believe in each other. We've got a great team spirit, so we're just taking one game at a time and we'll just move on as we go along.
What are your aims now for the second half of the season?
Well, we've got a big game on Wednesday night against Everton, so that's our only target at the moment. We'll just focus on that, and that's all we can do. We can't look at anything further than that, so we'll take that one first.
And Tarek, Newcastle, a fantastic start to this season. They've stuttered recently, but you've got to be pretty pleased all in all.
Yeah, it was a good point, yes.
Well, before the season started, to be seventh after 16 games, I think, any Newcastle fan would have taken that gladly. We were a bit lucky earlier on with the fixtures that we had. We didn't play any of the top teams early on in the season, but we still, we came through some of the tougher games, like Sunderland away and Stoke away, with 3 points in each case. And recently, even the points that we've dropped, we've actually put in some pretty good performances. I mean, we got a very good draw at Man United away. We lost against Chelsea. We wouldn't do that badly. I think we put in a very good performance against Swansea on Saturday. So I think with a couple of the new signings in January, I think we could push on, maybe finish in the top 8. I think most Newcastle fans will be delighted with the top 8 finish this season.
One of your tougher games against Sunderland. It would probably be a little bit tougher now, wouldn't it?
Well, I think, to be honest, I wasn't that happy when Martin O'Neill took over. I'm a big fan of his. I think, I can see them climbing up the table. I don't think there'll be any relegation battle. I can see them finishing comfortably mid-table. But I think, again, with a couple of signings in January, I think, we should be beating them at home again next time we meet them.
Jonathan, you're the editor of The Blizzard, but you're also a Sunderland fan. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I think this season has been very frustrating. I mean, last year, I think just how impressive the 10th place finish was is overlooked. It's Sunderland's third best finish in over 50 years. And that seemed to be lost purely because of the way the results fell, the good results being at the start of the season, and Sunderland fell away. And that dip in form then carried over into the new season. And there was a huge churn of players in the summer. 12 players went out, 11 players came in. And I think it's a combination of new players struggling to settle, but also probably an unbalanced squad. And of course, Asamoah Gyan leaving towards the end of the transfer window left Sunderland without a cutting edge. And what we've seen all year, really, I mean, not just since Gyan left, is that Sunderland have been very good at holding the ball. They've looked very tidy in possession, but they've just lacked that authority, that confidence in the final third, that clinicism in the final third to turn possession into chances and then to convert the chances they do create. And then they let in a soft goal at the back, and they can't get 2 goals back into the game. So, the fact that Sunderland's goal difference is only -1, which I think is the best in the bottom half of the table, suggests that they're not that far off being quite good. But it is just that lack of punch up front. I think it's really costing them at the moment.
How much does it hurt how well Newcastle had been doing, though?
I think you've got to admire what they've done. I suspect they'll start to falter now, particularly with Stephen Taylor being out for a protracted period. I think one of their great strengths was the fact that they were able to field an unchanged back four, plus the goalkeeper, who obviously has been excellent this season, Tim Krul. And I think one of the things that's been lost with the acceptance of rotation as being necessary is you don't get those defensive units. When, we think of the great Arsenal back four, and it was the same week in, week out. The great Liverpool back four of the early 80s was the same week in, week out. And that just doesn't happen now. Because of this acceptance, you have to rotate. Well, Newcastle did that. And so that's why their defence, or one of the reasons why their defensive record at the start of the season was so good. With Colaccini being injured, I know he came back this weekend. But his injury and then the serious injury to Stephen Taylor, I think that is going to affect them, and that they will start to falter. But at the start of the season, people were saying that they possibly could be facing a relegation battle. Well, that's clearly not the case, and they were superb that first 2 or 3 months.
Talking of how good Newcastle's defensive line have been, Leroy, Michael Vaughan's been a revelation for you guys this season.
Michel Vaughan, yeah, he's been
okay, there we are.
yeah, he's been brilliant for us. He's a great find, and he's a great guy as well. He's pulled out some great saves for us, and last week against 2 weeks ago against Fulham, he made a penalty save that won the game for us. So he's been superb for us, and he's a brilliant find.
Well, Swansea, one of the few teams that had been tipped for relegation at the start of the season. They're looking pretty safe now, as are Newcastle, as are Sunderland. There's not so much festive cheer going on at the bottom end of the story, though. There are a few managers feeling the full force of the winter chill.
We've let an opportunity again passes by, and it's getting repetitive saying the same things, and I've said that to the players. There must be a point, when they stand up and be counted and show not only their ability but their character, because make no mistakes, we're in a real dogfight now where we are.
I consider myself as a fighter, and what we'll do is we'll get back tomorrow and then we'll prepare for this game against Bolton.
It's been a really difficult start of the season. To go through a period like we had of negative results, it really tests individuals and the whole team.
I'm entitled to go and speak to him half an hour after the game. I did very calmly. I put over my opinion. It's not going to make a blind bit of difference, but at least I feel better for saying it.
Jonathan, do you think the criticism of the managers at the bottom, Owen Coyle and Steve Keen's, deserved?
Well, ultimately, they do have to take responsibility, I guess. I mean, the Owen Coyle situation seems very odd. The decline over the second half of last season, which was carried on to this season, is remarkably rapid. I mean, you wonder how big an influence Daniel Sturridge, who was there on loan last season, how big an influence he was in terms of giving them a cutting edge, which perhaps they don't quite have. Johan Elmander, of course, has left as well. So I think there's economic issues there, that perhaps the squad isn't as strong as it was last season. But also, they seem to have got on a horrible run where they let in goals, particularly at home, and they seem unable to plug that gap. And I guess once you get on one of those runs, it becomes very, very difficult to get off that. Steve Keane at Blackburn, he's clearly very unpopular with the fans, which doesn't help that even when they win, the fans continue the protest against him. I think there's a lot of bitterness, not just among Blackburn fans, but I get a general impression within football that people don't like the way Sam Allardyce was ousted from that job, and I know that other managers perhaps feel Steve Keane helped Sam out of the door, and that possibly doesn't put him in the best position. And I think just that bad atmosphere around the club, it just sort of gnaws away at them. So even when they play quite well, they possibly don't fully get the reward of that just because of the negativity that surrounds them. And it can't be easy playing at home with half your fans there, almost wanting you to lose, to force the situation and get Keane out and try and get a change of ownership, perhaps.
Leroy, can you see any way back for Owen Coyle or Steve Keane?
Yeah, there's a long way to go. I wouldn't write anyone off at the moment. Anything can happen in this league. It's a tough league. Every game's tough. So if they want to come back, they have to stay positive and just keep doing what they keep working hard at training ground, and things will pay off if they work hard.
Have you ever been in that position where fans protesting against your manager at your team?
No, I can't say I have, but I think Blackburn fans and they just got to get behind the team during the game, and if they want them to do well, you can say what you think after. If the performance is not good enough, then they got the right to speak up. But during the game, I think they should get behind the manager and the team and try and get a win for them.
Martin, why is it, do you think, that fans protesting against Steve Keane, but, for example, the Wigan fans seem to be still backing Roberto Martinez?
Well, it's pretty obvious. I mean, Roberto Martinez stayed faithful to Wigan when he was offered a deal at Aston Villa, while Steve Keane hasn't proved a thing when it comes to the manager skills. I mean, his team looks a tad clueless when he goes out and plays, and it seems like if they win, they're lucky. But while Martinez has a game plan...
I'm going to cut in there because we're just running out of time. Plenty more conversation going on in just a couple of minutes here on Sports World. Have your say. Don't go anywhere. Hello, you're watching Sports World. Have your say. I've got Jonathan Wilson with me in the studio here in London, editor of The Blizzard, a quarterly football journal. We've got Ibrahim, an Arsenal fan, and Abdullah, a Manchester United fan in Kuwait with us, and Martin, a Manchester City fan based in Sweden on Skype. Lots of chants around the grounds this weekend about Thursday nights on Channel 5, a channel in the UK here, which shows the Europa League. Of course, Manchester United and City both knocked out of the Champions League. They'll be playing in the Europa League after Christmas and into the new year. Abdullah, what do you think of United in that? Are you disappointed?
Totally disappointed, because it's not the right place for such a team like Manchester United. However, we put our faith in Sir Alex Ferguson for the next season, that he will do a great job in the Champions League.
But United are playing Ajax. That's not a bad tie.
Well, for me, it's about competition for Manchester United rather than bad time. But let's stick with it and get this trophy. Anyway, it's a trophy. However, it's not in our demands and it's not our dreams.
You say stick with it, but surely the closer to silverware you get, the more excited Manchester United fans might become, because arguably it could be United's best chance of silverware, couldn't it, this season?
Well, yes, but as I have a good financial basis, because I'm a financialist and economist, the net income, which will be from the Europa League, is much less than the Champions League, and this will affect the team and their budget regarding their debt as well. So it has many faces. It's just not about a sympathy thing, it's more than financial thing. And last year Manchester United earned £336 million, and this year it might be deducted, let's say, 70 million.
Jonathan, isn't it sad? Football fans talking about the finances of it. Isn't it about winning silverware?
Absolutely. It should be about winning silverware. But I understand that the point Abdullah's making, that for next season, given this is a squad clearly in transition, a young squad that probably does need a couple of new signings, if it lessens the opportunity to do that, if it lessens the resources United have to add to the squad, I do understand why it's a problem. but they're in the Europa League. They deserve to be there because they couldn't beat Basel twice. And so now they've got to get on with it, and it's a trophy they're in, they can win it, and they should try to win it. But it is very sad to hear fans talking about the bottom line, talking about the accounts. It really should be about glory.
Martin, less of a disappointment for Manchester City probably to be in the Europa League next season.
Well, first of all, coming from Sweden, any Swedish team would kill to be in the Europa League. So I'm buzzing. I look forward to it a lot. I mean, it's a bit disappointing to have been knocked out of the Champions League, but Europa League is a fun tournament, fun teams. It's going to be great.
And that's an interesting point, Jonathan, isn't it? Is it just English teams and English fans that are disappointed about playing in the Europa League?
I don't think it's just English fans, but it's definitely an attitude in Western Europe among the nations who I think have got used to doing well in the Champions League. So England, Spain, maybe Italy to an extent, maybe even Germany to an extent. Although actually Germany and Spanish teams' records in the Europa League is pretty good. But I think there's a danger of sort of overlooking what the point of the Europa League is, the point of a secondary competition. And part of that point, and unfortunately this is another financial issue, is to generate revenue for the best teams in the smaller nations, for teams from Romania or Serbia or Ukraine. And if you look at the boost that's been given to, say, Russian football by CSKA or Zenit winning the UEFA Cup, which has now become the Europa League, or Shakhtar in Ukraine winning it, it's a trophy they have an opportunity to win. And I think you see the difference in mentality if you look at Fulham, when they got to the final of the Europa League, or when Middlesbrough got there, because those are teams who with all respect to them, are never going to compete in the Champions League. But the Europa League gives them the opportunity of European competition. It gives them the chance of these away trips to places they've never been before, to play teams that they possibly never thought of before. And it does add a variety, and it is still a meaningful competition. Clearly, for the likes of Manchester United, it does feel like a step down, but I don't think we should sort of throw away the whole competition or neglect the whole competition just because it doesn't suit the top half dozen, maybe dozen sides in Europe.
Leroy, how would Swansea view the Europa League?
Yeah, we'd love to be in that. That would be a massive thing for a club like us, but Manchester United are a massive team, and I've got a lot of Man United friends who are Man United fans, so I know how disappointing they are, but I'm sure if they get to the final, they'll all be buzzing talking about it.
Well, the Europa League has received a bit of criticism in the last few days. The other thing that's received a bit of criticism is the Club World Cup. Isaiah Cameron has written on the Football Courier blog, in the end, the Club World Cup is a fun way to show off the talents of the entire world. A tournament that's not particularly challenging is also not brag-worthy. This will not be an important victory in any real sense. It was a victory for Barcelona. Mariam is a Barcelona fan who joins us on Skype from Prague. Is this one you're going to be celebrating this evening, Mariam?
Oh, definitely. To me, any trophy is a trophy, and it's a good representation of what the club has done. And even though it is many times viewed as a show competition, it's still, we were against Santos. We were against a Brazilian team. Brazilians play total football. Barcelona have their own version of total football, the Dutch Cruyff-esque version. And especially with the massive Neymar-Messi comparisons, I thought it was huge. And I'm always a pessimist, just like our coach Pep Guardiola. So I was anticipating this a lot.
Tariq, in Cairo, how much coverage has the Club World Cup received?
Well, this time I don't think people paid that much attention just because of the fact that there were no Egyptian teams there. I mean, a few years ago, Al Ahly, the Egyptian champions and African champions at the time, qualified, I think, 3 years out of 4. And at the time, I mean, I think literally the teams outside of Europe tend to pay a lot of attention to it. It's a chance to, mix it with the big teams, if you like. They're all dreaming of a final against Manchester United or against Barcelona. And I mean, Ahly, they finished third at the time, and it was a massive achievement for them. It was pretty much well celebrated. But this year, just because there's no Egyptian team, so people weren't, to be honest, that interested in following it this year.
Jonathan, any more than a money-making exercise, this one?
I think actually it's a strange beast in being a tournament that really has its heart in the right place. I think it's a lovely idea that teams from across the globe can compete. A lovely idea that the winner of the African Champions League or the Asian Champions League can take on the winners of the European Champions League. The problem is that the disparity is so great between those sides. And I mean, the final today, Barcelona won 4-0. It could have been much more than that. They absolutely battered Santos in the first half, 3-0 at half-time, but it was a training exercise for them. I know Santos is slightly unusual in that, having won the Libertadores, they only finished 10th in Brazil this season, possibly aren't quite as good as certain other Brazilian teams at the moment. But I would love a situation in which you could get the best club teams from all around the world together and it would be a proper competition. The problem is at the moment it just isn't.
Mariam, what's your take on the Champions League and the teams left in it? Do you think it's any lesser a competition without so many English sides in it?
I think it makes it that much more exciting and memorable, and it shows that anyone can come up and take a high place. Maybe, you never know, maybe someone like Shakhtar Donetsk will come really far, or I think it makes it that much more exciting, exactly. And it will, sure, it's a massive blow to Manchester United fans, but it will make both leagues, both the Europa League and the Champions League, more exciting and unpredictable, I think.
But you can't put the Club World Cup on the same level as the Champions League, surely?
No, unfortunately I can't, because even though, like I said, Santos is a Brazilian side and everyone knows the strength of the Brazilian players, the best Brazilians are in the Champions League, in the European League, and I'm not trying to be biased at all as a European League fan, but I do think it's the strongest competition in the world. So yeah, the Champions League is much higher than the Club World Cup, unfortunately. But as was said before, the idea is brilliant to come up against like a World Cup of clubs around the world, exactly.
Yeah, well, one of the aims of the Club World Cup, of course, to extend football across the globe. Nicholas Anelka has announced a move to China this week. We're going to be talking about that and a whole lot more in a couple of minutes here on Sports World. Have your say. Hello, you're watching Sports World, Have Your Say. We're talking a changing world order after Samuel Eto'o's move to Russia. This week we've had the news that Nicholas Anelka will be playing his football not in Chelsea but in China next year. Leroy, what do you make of that move?
You know, it's his decision. I think maybe he's had enough over here. He's done everything he can over here. He's been a great player over here and everyone's enjoyed watching him. So maybe he just fancies a new challenge, and why not go to China?
Randy, let's welcome you to Sports World, Have Your Say. You're on the telephone, a Chelsea fan. Why not go to China? What's your view?
Well, I think as a professional, I'd rather be playing someplace than sitting on the bench. So it doesn't look like he's going to get much playing time with us. So why not try something different or go someplace different? I don't see any. If I was him, I wouldn't see any downside to it.
Yeah, well, George Amonya Daniel on Facebook from Nigeria has said Anelka should go to China and help the Chinese league get some attention, like the Beckham sojourn in the US and Samuel Eto'o in Russia. I'd say it's worth it. Have fun while it lasts. And I suppose, Jonathan, yeah, you play football where you can and take the money while you can, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, he's reported to be getting, I think, £10 million a year. So, of course, as he comes towards the end of his career, he's got every right to take that, and it's a totally logical decision. I think what's interesting, though, is the wider idea of what's going on here. I mean, will he really have that big an impact in China? And I think the evidence that we've seen where teams in a, should we say, an unusual country have suddenly spent an enormous amount of money to sign one marquee player, it actually hasn't really done very much for the league as a whole. I mean, even Beckham, if you look at the figures in the US, the TV ratings for MLS games in the US remain pretty much as they were before he went there. I think there was a slight spike in attendances in the first season when he was there, and possibly at away games, people going to see him. But it's a small spike, and it's not really going to last after he's gone. What Beckham's move there did do was to give the MLS credibility in Europe, and I'm pretty sure that you can make a case that Beckham's move there paved the way for, say, Thierry Henry to go there, or for Robbie Keane to go there. So Beckham has given the MLS credibility in the rest of the world, maybe not so much in America. Now, I guess maybe Anelka will give the Chinese league credibility for players going over there. But we're starting to see this all over the place. And we saw this in, for instance, Uzbekistan when Bunyodkor, when they brought in Luis Felipe Scolari as their coach. Eto'o at Anji in Russia, we're seeing a lot of Russian teams investing in big players. I guess the question is how sustainable it is, because you need more than one or two players. You need continuous and sustained investment. And in Russia, where you have had that, it's still a second-ranked league in Europe. They still need more investment. So it is interesting to see how this pans out, and particularly with financial fair play in Europe. If that effectively lowers the wages for European players or for players playing in Europe, will that encourage more of them to go abroad? And maybe actually...
You in there, would you consider going abroad, and where would you consider going?
Me? Sorry, is that for me?
That's you. There's some
no,
leagues
not
that
at
would
all.
be more attractive.
I'm still at a stage where I think I've still got a lot to offer over here. So I'm enjoying my football over here. So it's not something I'll think about right now. But if I ever got a chance, later in my career to experience something else, I would look into it.
But it must be something the players talk about. They are eye-watering sums of money.
I don't really talk about money, to be honest. I just want to be the best I can in football and achieve as much as I can before I, go to a country like China or something like that. As I said, Anelka's won everything over here, and there's nothing else for him to get. He might feel that way, so who are we to try and stop him?
Mariam, how do you feel these leagues will impact on La Liga, for example? Does it worry you in any way?
Do you mean competition that big sort of players would go to
for entertainment value, for taking players, big name players, and lots of money, and affecting salaries and resources going into La Liga?
Well, I think La Liga is a league where players don't go to retire, they go to expand and promote their career. So I don't think that will be a problem in terms of this. In terms of players going out of La Liga to more so-called unusual leagues and countries, there's nothing you can say. As sad as it is for a football fan to be watching these players doing it, it's nothing personal. It's just business, and it will continue to happen. If that answered your question correctly.
Yeah, Jonathan, how much of an impact are these going to have? Are they going to be flash in the pans, or do you think they will sustain their competitiveness?
I think to a large extent they will be flashes in the pans. I mean, this isn't the first time we've seen this. There's possibly more countries who are doing it. But I mean, for instance, Colombia in the late 40s, early 50s suddenly broke away from FIFA, were paying enormous salaries and attracted players over. And that lasted probably 5 or 6 seasons before the initial impetus was lost and the money started to dribble away. I think where this might have a big impact is in Brazil, where there is a credible league, where people have great respect for the football there. For a player moving to Brazil, it's not seen as an unusual move. And so if wages in Europe are lowered by financial fair play, with the boom in the Brazilian economy, which I think grew 7.5% last year as the rest of the world went backwards, then possibly those clubs can start to afford bigger wages. And we've seen Neymar, of course, who was widely tipped to move to Real Madrid or possibly Chelsea this season. He's now signed a new 2-year contract, which has been funded, admittedly, not by the club, or not by the club alone, but by 7 sponsors who are paying him £120,000 a week. So that's a salary which is competitive in European terms, and he can get it in Brazil. So I think the Brazilian league really is the boom league at the moment, and that's largely down to their economy.
Tarek, would you ever watch the Chinese Super League or the Russian Premier League?
Well, not at the moment, to be honest. I mean, the common factor you'll find with all these players moving to the so-called lesser leagues is that most of them have already achieved probably what they never dreamt of achieving. Like Eto'o, I think he only went to Russia after winning numerous titles in Spain, Italy, Champions League, and even with his country. So I can't remember last time where like a top star player left for a lower league before the age of 30. I mean, look at Anelka, look at Henry, look at Beckham, look at Eto'o. They all left pretty much after they'd passed their prime. And I remember in Beckham's case, he even left, I think it was pretty near the time when Stephen McLaren told me he would never play for England again. So, and Eto'o, he's won it all. Anelka's probably can't see himself playing for another big club in Europe again. So I think, that's the common factor you'll notice in all these cases.
Okay, it's a fascinating subject, but we can't end today without talking about Christmas parties, given it's just a week until Christmas. Mariam, is there much of a culture of Christmas parties for the players in Spain?
I know that by watching the Premier League as well, I know that the Premier League parties they go all out, costumes and everything. It isn't as publicized as it is, at least I haven't seen it so in Spain, but they definitely do. They release Christmas videos of the players wishing a Merry Christmas. There are some paparazzi photos of players going to the official dinners, but it's not as all out as Premier League.
We've certainly had some pictures of some fancy dress. This is the Manchester City party that we're seeing pictures of here. Leroy, have you had your Christmas party with Swansea?
Yeah, we've done that already, and we got it out of the way early doors because we, Christmas is an important time. But yeah, we had a good time. You got it out of the way
when the media weren't watching. Is that what you mean?
No, we had a good time. Our squad's pretty behaved, so all the lads are okay. Everyone got back safe, and we was back in training on Tuesday.
And no calls to the police or anything untoward?
No one got arrested, and no one got injured, so it was good.
Well, it's actually not all the Premier League teams are being allowed at a Christmas party this year. Paul Lambert's said no, and the Spurs boss Harry Redknapp has done the same. He says if they can't miss having a drink with the money they're earning, there is something wrong with them. They can get on with their football and then go away for 6 weeks in the summer. Don't cause problems at Christmas. Leroy, what do you reckon on that?
Well, every manager's different. If that's his decision, they have to do that. But we were responsible lads, we're grown men, so we know how to behave, and we know we got responsibilities, and people are looking out, looking to put us down and watching everything we do. So we just made sure we behaved, and we had a good time together. It's good to spend time with the boys because
it's quite good for team spirit and team bonding, really, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's once a year, so I don't see the problem with it. As long as everyone behaves and everyone gets back safe, and it's all good for me.
But Jonathan, Sunderland's Christmas party didn't really end up in such a positive light. What is it about footballers making the headlines, do you think, at this time of year?
I think any group of young men who go out together, occasionally they get up to hijinks. In Sunderland's case, they've probably gone too far. What I'm interested in, actually, is the fancy dress element. I'm interested if Leroy's party was fancy dress, because the fact that fancy dress seems a very common theme, it placed it really squarely in the tradition of carnival, which goes back to medieval times. And that, I think, had a very useful societal function in terms of allowing people to let off steam, to release tension. And I guess maybe it does the same for footballers. You have one day in the season when the normal rules don't apply, and everybody dresses in an unusual, strange way to to demarcate that difference. This is a day when all rules are off. So, Leroy, were you wearing fancy dress?
Yeah, we did. We all bought each other Christmas jumpers. So it's nothing. It's not. I don't think it's a carnival thing at all. It's just a bit of banter between the lads. Because sometimes you don't really know everyone in the change room, but once you get together, you see a little bit of people coming out, and it's sometimes good to know what kind of characters you have in the change room, and you get to know everyone. I think it's good. It's just a little bit of laugh between the lads. It's not a carnival, and if it's just a little bit of banter, and I think you need that in the change room.
What do you make of the Nicholas Bentner view? He's apologised for the stories that have been in the paper about him, allegations of damage to cars after the Sunderland Christmas party. He says an ordinary person doing an extraordinary job. Is that an excuse?
No, I don't think you could do that at all. People's property, he wouldn't like it if someone done it to him, so as long as he apologised, he knows no one could behave like that, not even a normal person in the public. You normally get arrested for things like that, so that's not acceptable, and that's not what it's about at all.
Leroy Lita, I've got to cut you off there. Yep. Thank you so much for joining us this week on Sports World. Have your say. Thanks, Jonathan, as well, and to all our guests. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Goodbye.